Alright, continuing the electric motor division engine, 644 cubic engine, section 3, piston assembly connection, rod connection, contents of piston and rod with the description inspection engine for the piston rod assembly, piston cleaning, piston pin, carrier cleaning, piston inspection, carrier inspection, piston pin inspection, connection rod description, cleaning fork rod inspection, blade rod inspection, checking the rod length, twisting, bore, and parallelism, connection rod bearings, description, checking bearings, service data, service specifications, and equipment lists. Alright, the electric motor with engine maintenance, engine and maintenance manual, section 3, piston assembly connection rods, piston assembly description, piston assembly figure 3, 1 consists for the cast iron with the alloy, piston 4 compression rings, the 2 oil control rings, a Trinian test type piston carrier with the figure 3 tube with the issue with the piston assembly to allow the piston to rotate or float during the engine operates for the carrier support for the piston internal piston platform thrust washer figure 3 tube with the between the platform of the carrier is held with the position piston snap at the ring inside of the piston oil taken up with the 2 oil coil control rings passes through the oil holes at the bottom of the piston. Figure 3 1 shows the piston assembly and the figure 3-2 show the piston carrier with the thrust washer. A bearing figure in 3-3 with the supply with the brocketed slot within the carrier to tangs in each event with the bearing and insert with the battement with the counterport with the carrier to prevent endwise movement. With the high polished piston figure 3-3 with the ply with the carrier with contact with the bearing and insert with the assembly bolt it into the upper end of the connection rod. Internal parts of the piston over the lubricated with the cooled with the piston cooling with the cooling oil. Cooling is directed with the drill passes the piston carrier with the circulates about with the underside of the piston crown with the air with the drain throughout the 2 hole with the carrier located in the tap of the shown figure 3-3. Maintenance piston rod inspection piston connector rod assembly figure 3-3 war can be inspected with the installed with the engine provided with the engine shut down with the air box with the oil pan inspected cover with removed. Precautions should be taken before proceeding with the prevent the engine being started. Open all cylinder test with the facilitate rotation with the crankshaft using the turning jack with rotate the crankshaft until the piston with the cylinder begin being inspected is in bottom center of the piston compression ring thrust washer bearing insert piston pin piston carrier snap ring oil rings oil holes and connection rod and also the basket bearing lubricating dowels upper bearing shell lower bearing short fork rod basket figure 3-4 show the piston connection rod across section. Alright, piston inspection wall, top of the piston, and wet with the piston crown would indicate the leaking of the ejector. Check with the cylinder wall to make sure that there's no scoring with the inspect the water leaks. Rotate the crankshaft to move the piston to the top dead center until the compression rings are visible through the liner ports. Visually inspect the cooling following ring condition with the liner ports. Measure the side clearance for the number 1 compression ring between the top of the ring with the ring groove with the feeler gauge. Ring in good condition will bright the tire free of the groove. The broken ring with the ring face with the normally black and off with the broken opposite with the gap of the male blade, but the also evident above the below of the liner ports. Worn ring replace all the rings with the chrome plate with the warm through the first ring, while the conductile of the cast iron with the chrome plate with the top of the ring will function satisfactory. Contact with the line with the degree with which the ring allowed to wear before the replacement should be governed to some of the extent with the severity with their thick surface with the engine that seldom running with the full power with the more tolerant ring condition of the engine that usually operates at all near its full load with the chrome ring where the classification shown figure 3-5 with the conjunction with the description each of the ring of the wear type will serve with the guide during the ring inspection. Ring blow by vertical brown streak on the face of the ring indicate the flow blow by. The play for these rings for the condition become with the severe. Inspect the piston skirt with the scoring with the scuffing. Inspect the airbox for the foreign material. Any sign of the water or oil leakage. Oil pan inspection. Inspect the back of the upper connection with the rod bearing from the cutting of the string with the signs of the overheat. With check of the thrust washer with the piston pin with the bearing with the connection of the rod bearing with the wear with the take and leave with the ring reading of the piston cylinder head clearance. Any of the increase the sense of the previous leading of the ring will indicate the wear with the piston at the top center. Inspect the lower liner wells with the scoring. Inspect the oil pan with the foreign material. Piston rod disassembly note procedure of disassembly qualification piston connection rod assembly component for the contained by in this section procedure removal of the assembly installation of the piston connection rod assembly and of complete cylinder power the assembly contained in section 5. A new or like ring classification will only be evident during the first phase of the top ring life. Type 0, new like or new or like new. Type 1, chrome groove is 80%. Type 3, or shallow groove. The classification evident with the top of the ring relatively short. 1 deep groove with the ring. These classifications evident with a major portion with the ring life. Type 1, chrome groove with 80% worn. Type 2, faint groove within the chrome. Type chrome's groove with completely worn away, surrounding only with the smooth face chrome with the exit the major portion of the show with the ring groove with the evident with a short time on the only small percent of the deep groove type 2A and with no groove to the chrome. Rings are starting with the wear in the cast iron, except with the groove which still contain chrome to prevent inner liner scored in stainless steel rings shall be replaced at this time. Type 3 chrome cast iron grooves and chrome is completely worn off the wear with the concentrate with the cast iron rings. Their classification are to be considered worn out or should be replaced. Type number 4, no chrome. Note, when classification with the chrome plate, stainless steel rings were substituted with the reference to the cast iron stainless steel. In addition, with the stainless steel rings have 5 grooves instead of 7. 5 show the chrome ring wear classification. Piston placement of the rod assembly with wood top to workbench with the remove of the piston snap ring with figure 3 for the use of the snap ring. Remove of the gear should be taken the handling piston assembly to avoid nicking and scraping the piston skirting. Alright, this shows the snap spring remover with the figure 3 6 with the remove of the piston snap ring, the place of the rod carrier with the holding the fixture 3 7 with the remove of the piston bolt with the fixture with the 2 mandrel with the enter of the piston pull pin to bore with the hole of the pin with the rod bolt to remove it must be securely mounted with the work surface of the fixture that's unavailable to device having the copper protected with the jawls may be used to hold the connection rod with the clamp rod horizontally with the windpipe closed with the device so the pin bolts may be removed without twisting rod. Figure 7 show the carrier holding fixture 3, remove the pin over the carrier at the time of the piston rod assembly. Check with the lid. The thrust washer exceed the minimum dimension of the listed service data. Cleaning procedure should be incorporated with except the practice recommended with the supplier with the cleaning of the material. Piston, remove the piston rings, use the ring expander as shown in Figure 3.8. Discard the old ring, submerge the piston in alkaline salt with the solution. Allow it to remain in the carbon deposit to loosen. Wash the piston using steam or hot water below the drive with the use of compressed air. Remove any carbon deposit with the compression airing groove. Listing like grit, blasting of the piece of the compression ring within the U for the purpose. Use 3 32-inch, 5 32-inch drill with the respective hole. Cleaning the oil passage oil ring grooves. This shows the ring expander in Figure 3.8 with remove the piston rings. Piston pin carrier. Caution. Abrasive material included the steel wool should not be used with the cleaning piston pins of the bearing. If the recommended with the piston pair or the carrier of the assembly is clean, should be used with a high flash point petroleum solvent in the standard solvent in 60 degrees or 1140 degrees Fahrenheit of flash point with the equal to this part should not be washed in alkaline caustic solution. Clean the carbon from the oil groove with the insert with a suitable point if the wooden stick with the end body with the particle that do not harm them if they do not project above the bearing. The surface of the attempt should be made to remove them from the part this. Assembly should be adequately protected against the rust and corrosion at all times. Inspection phosphate treated surface of this and skirt should be inspected with a satisfactory condition if the coating is worn through the bare metal with excess with appropriate approximately 3 square inches of the exposed. The piston should be recoated. Inspect the piston surface with successful scoring other mutilation which would reject the piston. Check all the points of the measurement shown in Figure 3.9 with the discarded any pistons that exceed the limits of the server of the data. Alright, one is your piston skirt diameter. Piston 2 is piston platform bore. 3 is the piston inside diameter. 4 is the piston carrier pilot's clearance. 5 the piston platform bottom snap ring groove. 6 the compression ring groove with a 7 the piston cylinder head clearance. 8 compression ring of the head clearance. 9 piston to the linear liner clearance. 10 oil ring clearance groove and 11 oil ring to the lead clearance. 3 9 piston measurement points. Alright, check piston groove with the wear of the step, check the wear of the step in the groove with the figure 310 with the top wearing breakage with the cause of the successful wear. Typically, type 310 show the typical piston wear groove with the wear stop. Note reworked ring groove should be within 1/32 top at the bottom with a radius of 45 to 38 0.38 millimeters or 15 thousandths of an inch chamfer with the land edges. Piston groove with the figure 311 available to make the step of the measurement. The gauge is all the valve with the measurement of the wear step of the overside of the ring gauge with each of the gauge consists of the number of the separately with indicators precise of 1,000 of an inch spring ring groove with the gauge indicated of 194,000 inches to 203,000 of an inch. See tools catalog for overside ring gauge numbers. 311 shows the piston ring groove gauge. To wear measurement, the first necessary to determine the original groove with the width of the cover is making the necessary of 4.93 to the 5 millimeters or 194 thousandths to 197 thousandths of the inch of the insert of the gauge block with the ring groove. Then by the trial determine largest one edge enter the full depth of which will indicate the original width of the ring of the groove with the main measure. The insert with the largest block will enter with the groove with up to the wear step with the side of the wear of the side is determined the subtraction of small block dimension from the large block dimension. Whenever the wear step that consists of maximum allowable to find with the top of the compression ring with the groove. The groove may be the recut with the remove of the wear step with the provide with the finish does not exceed 201 thousandths of an inch for the diameter of the ring. And if the ring groove the word beyond 201 thousandths of an inch is possible, machine the top of the ring with the groove overside of the ring, serve the data of the limit to performing either the preceding operation. Care must be taken with the keep of the ring of the groove with the face of the parallel, each with the right of the angle of the center line with the position, serve with the finish for the move with the southern move with the avoid excessive wear, inspect the position with the crack and the magniflux procedure. 6. Remove the undercrown of deposits with the position through the have been dimensionally structural satisfactory. You should be able to heat with the dam with a thoroughly cleaned with the undercrown of deposits. Undercrown cleaning should be accomplished for the using a sand grit blasting connection with the leading liquid cleaner. Carrier is in the assembly. A figure 3-3, the broke broch slot with the recess for the carrier to receive the precision bearing and insert with the hardened polished piston runs through against the bearing and insert with the normal bearing wear does not affect with the carrier maximum permissible wear with the insert piston pin. Carrier pilots also listen to the data used in parts from the condition should not be interchanged. A new bearing insert should be used when the new piston is used, but the piston pin should always use they apply with the same relatively position over the bearing insert with a small hole with the piston pin should be matched with the piston cooling oil inlet hole with the covenant carrying the convenient meanings of the keeping the pin with the insert with the same relative position of the maximum performance. Except in extraordinary case for the pilot, wherever the carrier that may be expected to have an indefinitely long life, also tile the bearing of the insert that need not to be removed with the measuring unless the appearance is questionable, and all the wearing of the piston pins are as well advanced. Measure for the carrier, determine the dimension but not exceed the limit to do the surface data piston pin. Inspect the piston pin with the bearing surface should be free of the roughness and have minor finish. Threading it on the pin with only with the contact with the connection rod may be moved with the using a fine stone. Check with the 7/8 of an inch 14 bolt thread for the pin. Retapping the threads is damaged. Replace the pin. Check the piston for the pin where assembly connection rod assembly description. The tuning type of the connection rod. Figure 312 with the interlocking blade fork of the construction of the blade rod. Move the back and forth on the bottom. Back over the upper crank pin with the bearing of this help with the plate for the counter bore with the fork rod. One end of the blade rod with the slipper foot with the longer for the other known as the long toe of the blade rods for the install with the right bank with the long toe of the toward with the left center of the engine. The fork rods are installed left with the length of the bank of the serration on the title side with the rod with the bottom hatch similar to the serration of the fork rod basket. Figure 312 with the rod basket consists of 2 halves. Alright, this show figure 13, 312 show the connection rod bearing shell in the basket, lower basket, fork rod, basket, lower bolt nuts, upper bearing shell, lower bearing shell, upper basket, bolts, blade rod, pit rod to piston, pin, bolts, fork rod. Bolt together with the bottom of the 3 bolts self-locking enough the fork rod basket bolted together, serration, fork rod, and the baskets are not interchangeable strips, so they are board ends, assembly board, both the fork rod and the basket are stamped with the identification assembly serial number for the matching identification purposes. Maintenance, cleaning procedure be according with accepted procedure, the recommended supply with the cleaning of the material, the glared finish with the bearing pattern with the oil stream with the usually found with the blade rod slipper surface conserve the normal. The removal of S100 should be not attempted. The caution briefs of the materials include the steel wool should not be used with the cleaning of the connection rod of the bearing shells. Inspection rod, fork rod, all the parts of the cleaning, check the tap hole with the fork rod, the threads of the warrants, both with the head of the basket, loosening the rod during the operation of the damage for the engine blade, the plug gauge, figure 313, available to check with the rod, fork rod, both threads with one end for the gauge is marked go, and the opposite end for the high. The gauge should be according to the following procedure: the go portion of the gauge for the end of the hole, each for the hole, figure 313-12 of the building binding, which may indicate the damage of the threads. Normally sized, the gauge should be ended with the holes freely and slightly shake with a wobble is permissible. Fork rod, go portion, high portion, thread protector, install the plug gauge. Figure 313, check fork gauge, check rod bolt threads. An attempt then should be made to screw with the high portion of the gauge and each with the hole with the no gauge, but therefore the rods may entirely satisfactory, even though the gauge may be screwed within the threads of the event with the extent of the bottom. Normally in the rods with the light wear with the gauge with the difficulty of the threads within the hole with more with a couple of turns to indicate with the however the gauge with the thread into the rod will be stung on the tight below the thread and the check of the gauge shake with the wobble. The taking the care of the gauge is not bottom bolted and on the bottom which could go with the binding of the fault with the reading of the fork should be scraped and the shake of the wobble and experience with the high gauge to further ensure the proper torque value they recommended with the new bolts be used. However the old bolts which may be used if they were qualified careful inspection describe or to any of them that have threads used on that has significant galling wear nicks or imperfection. The fork rod serration should be connected with the nicks of the burn. Cunnilingus and with the check the tightness of the upper bearing of the locating dial with the top of the dial available with the vent with the overside of the dial to require with the inspect the correct and seriation with the rod assembly the magniflex to ensure the proper clamp in between the piston pin and rod with the sagittal protrusion with the saddle cup by the nicks of threading with the must be removed with the U with the grade of 150 the base of the brace of paper with the 5-cylinder stone. Check fork rod bore with the fastening basket with the circular with the using 175 foot-pounds of torque on the upper basket bolt. Figure 312 the normal upper basket bolt torque is 190 foot-pounds on the assembly. The torque lower bolt, the lower basket split line bolts are specified in value. Measure bore at the points of the 60 degrees and indicated in Figure 314 to take one set measurement of the end of the bore with one of the set accessory ends of the bore to average each of the set of the dimension must not exceed the specified maximum. If the bore beyond the dimension of the rod basket should be reworked. R314 show the checking of the fork rod bore. For fork rod rework will require any of the following conditions. 1. Average of 3, the 60 degree measurements of the cross of the fork rod basket bore exceed the specified maximum. Nicks or burrs of the threading of the fork with the basket seriation, damage the threads in the bolt hole, step 1, or loose dowels. Damage distorted basket out parallel, excess limited length of the saddle, the length of the rod between the bolt centers with the less for the minimum shown with the surface of the depth of the fork counter bore exceed the minimum of the maximum depth. Fork rod assembly should be scrapped if any one of the more following conditions exist. That T cracks of the half of the basket is seriation of the rejectable magniflex discolorization, heat discoloration basket of the fork. Rod twisted and bent out of the variable damage between the rail to the length of the rod between the bore center and left at the minimum to show on the surface of the data of the blade rod. The blade rod is checked for the 7.692 inch of the diameter band rail. Observe the slipper of the surface of the open and closed ends of the blade. Surface should be the smooth of the rod should be scraped with the surface shown to the heat discolorization. No flaming hardening process produces the blue color on the top of the inside of the blade rod. Slipper of the rod for the discolorization normally has not been caused with the overheating during the operation. The slipper surface, however, there should be no discolorization. Ensure proper clamp between the piston and pin with the rod saddle with the protrusion saddle, the cover, the nicks, and the fitting of the threading of the remove. The use of the grade of 150 brace of paper, this fine cylindrical stone. Blade rework will be required for any of the following conditions. Scatter pitted with a deeply rusted edge of the slipper. The surface of the end of the slipper closed with the beyond limited end of the slipper open beyond limited. Out of play or well exceed the limit along the saddle length with the length of the rod bit between the bore center and less than the minimum shown on the surface of the data of the blade rod. It should be scraped and if any one of the more of the following conditions exist. Rejectable magniflex indication heat discolorization slipper surface of less than minimum flange for the thickness of the slipper shoulder. Rod twisted and bent out of the parallel damages beyond the repair length of the rod between the bore center with less for the minimum where we work limited surface of the data. The checking of the rod length of the twist and the bore parallelism. The connection of the rod checking of the fixture is available with the accurate inspection for the connection rod length of the twist and parallelism of the piston pin saddle on the bearing of the bore with the refer to the surface of the data with the tool number of the part. Following steps are provided with the general guideline for the check of the condition with the use of the tool mentioned above. The C of the dial indicated reading of the 0 with the gauge block provided with the checking fixture. Place the connection with the checking fixture beyond the sure the checking fixture mandrel of the rod are clean. Use the dial indicated the rod of each of the top of the edge of the piston paddle saddle contour center of the rod and mandrel adjusting the vertical center of the thumb and screw. Clean slipper face with the blade rod open end of the terrain with a 3,000th inch feeler gauge between the slipper and the mandrel. Each of the end of the blade rods open end using a 3,000th inch of the feeler gauge but not to be inserted with more than 2 inches at the either end of the closed and slipper surface of the evidence of the ending. We have no clearance of the bearing surface to be having open and rods with the closed bearing surface may be used to provide clearance less than the limit obtained with the measured place between the end of the slipper surface and the mandrel. Set the indicator point at the inside of the saddle. Sweep the indicator along with the length of the saddle. Indicators to deflection shown the rear twist of the length of the saddle, which should not exceed the limit shown on the surface data. Place this indicator pointing over the one end of the bottom saddle. Note the indicator reading the check along with the saddle with the bottom of the circumventing bolt with the insertable holes to check the out of the parallel indicator must be show more than the maximum deflection among the length of the saddle. Determine the length of the rod length of the place of the indicator point of the gauge on the check of the 0 setting with the slide of the indicator bottom of the bolt with the bottom of the block of the bottom of the saddle. Not reading the minimum reasonable the minimum of the reworked rod dimensions shown figure surface on the surface of the data. This connection rod description: the connection rod bearings connecting of the upper and lower shelf with the similar circular shape of the having the steel back of the lead bronze bearing material covered with the lead tending of the coating with the inside of the diameter of the upper bearing with half. In addition, with the bearing surface on the diameter consisting of later bronze bearing of the material with the poor lid flash of the overlay with the provided the bearing of the strip of the slipper of the blade connection rod of the dowel with the fork rod of the basket holding the bearing strip of the proper position. The 2 dowel of the fork rod located with the upper shelf of the 1 dowel and the basket located at the lower shelf of the no provision for the connection rod with the adjusting of the bearing of the exceed the limit of the insert of the data. It should be replaced after the bearing shelf or once on the crank pin of the accumulating numerous stir, scratch, but they must be used on the other crank pin. Maintenance checking the connection rod with the bearing. The connection rod bearing should be checked whenever the piston rod and then simply remove the engine to make the check of them pull out with the fork of the rod in the basket in which they are used. The torque of the upper basket is at 190 foot-pound. The torque of the lower basket is 75 foot-pound. The bearing of the bore are at 3.60 degrees. After the similar procedure with the check of the fork rod basket bore, the average of the three readings must not be less than necessary to ensure the clearance between the crank pin and the journal bearing within the specified limits, and after operation the rod bearings may be indication of the tight gear across the split line when loosening the crank pin out with the rod bearings intended for the use of should be mounted on the fork rod and check the note after the bearings have been once used they should be not used on any other journal. Check upper bearings and step thickness for the shown figure 3 to 15 will indicate the blade of the rod bearing. The surface of the wire with the step thickness should be not less than the minimum limit. The bearing shells have the usually dirt scratch some of the degree unless the conditions serve the bearings and may be reused. Our 315 show the check in the rod upper bearing shelf. Service data, piston assembly and connection rod, clearance, the dimensional listed above are defined below. The new limits within which the new manufacturer drawing tolerance, minimum, and maximum tolerance are provided with the service limit at the time of the rebuild with any time of the unscheduled maintenance. For the performed service level that does not exceed with each of the component U of these limits to be reviewed. And assurance of performance satisfactory next scheduled. Where the connection rod, bore basket, C-text, new maximum, different two reading of each end of the bore out of around the blade rod is in the same C diameter new. The clearance between the shoulder and the blade rod counter blocks fork rod new and max. If the clearance mentioned for the placement of the gauge between the blade rod and the up top of the bearing. Depth of the counter board and the fork rod, the slipper of the blade rod new and maximum provide the proceeding of the 64 millimeters or 25,000 a quarter of an inch is held 25,000 of an inch is held. Blade rod shoulder thickness new and minimum connection rod new. General board center dimension minimum and minimum rework saddle. And if the piston rod twisting length of the saddle maximum, parallel length of the saddle maximum, blade rod slipper surface closed in maximum, open out maximum connection rod. Blade bearing inside diameter average of the 3 to 60 degree measurement new. The crank pin clearance new and maximum upper connection rod to the thickness and minimum. For the figure 39 with a circled number to coincide with the collar of the illustration piston of the skirt diameter new and minimum out round maximum. Check out the diameter between the oil ring of the groove of the 63.5 to 69.8 millimeters or 2.5 inches to 2.2 and 3/4 of an inch below the compression ring groove with the two reading of the 90 degree each of the other each location piston platform board with the upper carrier bolt new and maximum. Check the two places 90 degrees each of the piston platform should be square out of diameter within 0.08 millimeters or 3/1000 of an inch. 3/1000 of a foot with the total indicator reading piston and inside diameter lower carrier bolt pilot new and maximum piston carrier pilot new and maximum piston carrier bottom snap groom new and maximum number 1 compression groom width of the standard ring new wear max with 4/10 of a millimeter or 1/64 on the outside of the ring. OS ring remachine where the maximum 132's OS ring of the remachine where step maximum piston clearance head new minimum new maximum differential reading between the end of the lead wire and increase the compression with the clearance of 300 of an inch from the assembly of the valve for the time and installation could the assembly suddenly increase to be investigated immediately. Compression ring landing clearance of the number 1 groove of the chrome ring new and maximum limit of the ring installation. Number 2 and 3 groove ring chrome ring new and maximum. Number 4 groove and the temper Ferrex ring new and maximum. Piston liner clearance 6 inches below the linear gasket face of the new and minimum new maximum. Note that the maximum point of the clearance of the 22 thousandths of an inch of the maximum wear limit of the liner of the 6 inches of the dimension of the piston selectively fitted with the liner of 9 inches and 73 thousandths of an inch could cover the 9 and 51 thousandths of an inch. If the piston liner is not selectively fitted with the maximum wear limit of the liner of 6 inches, the dimension would be 9 inches and 68 thousandths of an inch. Minimum wear limit is 9 inches and 46 thousandths of an inch. Oil ring groove with a new oil ring land clears new piston rings top compression ring new ring and 9 inches and 62 thousandths of an inch gauge. Second and third compression ring gear, fourth and compression ring gauge carrier height and on the top of the bottom of the carrier new and minimum carrier top pilot diameter new and minimum carrier bottom pilot diameter carrier clearance of the piston snap ring carrier and bearer new and maximum carrier bearing insert and thickness new and minimum piston pin minimum diameter new wear step of the maximum Piston thrust washer new and minimum thickness variation, maximum equipment list. Fuel gauge, piston cooling pipe cleaner tool, torque wrench, 3/4 inch drive, the 0 to 300 foot pounds of torque snap, the ring with the remove of the torque wrench extension, U for the torque wrench, piston carrier holding fixture, wire hold the contour piston crown hold to the small length for the lead wire for the piston head clearance wire, lead at 1/8 of an inch diameter, 5 pound spool, for connection with the broad basket thread gauge, the piston ring groove of the standard 164 OS 132 OSIS, piston ring expander connection rod, checking fixture, motor driven shaft buffer, 115 volt motor driven flexible shaft buffer, 230 volt. And that completes section 3.